Chapter 2 Summary Conversations with God, Book 1. In Chapter 2, God reveals that divine presence exists in all things, the sadness and the laughter, the bitter and the sweet. Every experience holds a purpose, and through it, we are invited to recognize that God is not separate from any part of life, even the moments we label as painful or challenging. The idea of good and bad experiences is rooted in value judgments we've inherited from others rather than conclusions drawn from our own direct experience. Yet, it is the experience itself that we came here for, and through it, we are given the power to create ourselves anew. God shares that before creating humanity and the universe, he couldn't fully know himself in all his glory. Thus, his first desire was to experience himself through creation. His second desire is that we too come to know and experience who we truly are, using the power we've been given to create and shape our lives however we choose. Lastly, God desires that life be a process of constant joy, continuous creation, and endless expansion, allowing for total fulfillment in each present moment.
We are already living in this perfect system designed for these desires to be realized. Not someday, but right now. The difference between us and God is simple. God knows this truth, while we often forget. But the moment we fully remember, when we align with this knowing, we too will experience life as totally loving, accepting, blessing, and grateful. The chapter also challenges us to examine our values. When we can confidently declare who we are and what we believe without hesitation or fear of judgment, we have reached a level of self-awareness and authenticity that leaves no need for further improvement. In that state, we realize we've already achieved the perfection we've been seeking. At that point, the search for answers ends because we fully embody the truth of who we are. God's message in this chapter is clear. Life is not about striving for perfection, but realizing that perfection already exists within us. Through embracing every experience, whether joyful or difficult, we step into the fullness of who we were created to be.
All right, so I pick up on the God revealing his divine presence existing in all things. And, the first thing that comes to mind is growing up, in Lutheran church, and having this thought process as to, God being separate from us and, us essentially, having to, be forgiven for our sins and having to act a certain way and live a certain life. And, this really opens up the dialogue in my take as far as, really realizing that we're part of God. We all are part of God. Everything is part of God. And through these experiences, God, and through us, we realize, what we came here to be, what we came here to remember. And it just, to me, I think it's what you and I have talked about so many times. It's one of those things where it's a much better message, to be able to walk away with something like that and walk towards something like that, as opposed to feeling like there's, I guess, hellfire and damnation on the other end of the spectrum if we don't behave as we should.
Yeah, and I think the main thing with religion and just schools and all of the different public systems that we have, I think a lot of times the message is that we are separate. And the separation is what makes us feel like we have to pray and ask for things, right? Kind of like what we talked about before. It's we are actually want to pray as if the wish has already been fulfilled. Ask and it is given, all of that good stuff. And so it's like, whenever you realize that it's like an ocean, right? God is the ocean and we are a drop in the ocean, each one of us individual, but not separate, right? We are all a part of it. We all make it. And I believe that, and this kind of comes in some of the later chapters, but I really believe that we're working through God. These are experiences that he actually wants to have as a human. So we are God in human form. And that might be a really different opinion than what they have in different religions. A lot of my family is Mormon, and then I was Christian for quite some time, and I would still consider myself a Christian. I still, I believe in Jesus. I believe that he came here. I believe that he was the perfect one. I believe he was God in human form. But I also believe that we have this amazing message to give out to the world that God is not a judgmental God. We literally are here to have these experiences.
Yes.
So the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is, we are here to express through him. And when you know that, you never feel alone. That's what's so cool, is that we can sit here and just feel like we have this other, for lack of better words, like other person that's literally inside of us that we can feel at home, even in our own bodies, and not feel like we have to look outward for anything.
Absolutely. And one of the things, as you mentioned, this comes in later chapters too, is the continuous call out of non-judgment but observation. God is observing, and if we're living our lives in more of an observational manner and not making judgments of others, knowing that we are all imperfect. We are all perfect in our creation. Seeking out to understand that perfection within us. We're not. But we're striving to see it, to recognize it, not so much striving to be it. Because we are it, so it's to recognize it, to see it and understand it. But I love how he calls out, and we're going to hear it a lot in future chapters, is the observation over judgment.
Yeah, and I think the whole idea with this book is it's just a beautiful message. And if people don't believe that, Neale Donald Walsch was actually talking to God, it's like, no matter what you think of, it's like we talked about the imagination, right? I mean, he is talking through him, because we are a part of him. So everything that we're thinking is actually God's thoughts through us. So it's not this individuation. It's not the separation. Mm-hmm. It is individuation.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things too that jumps out at me is the call out being totally joyful, loving, accepting. It's what's wrong with that? When you really, and again, we don't set out in this podcast to cast aspersions to religions, because I too, believe I'm a Christian. I believe, in a loving God. It's just, I think, to me, it resonates better to believe that being joyful, being accepting, being loving is a much more, I guess, peaceful way, yes, of looking at life and looking at others and understanding that we're all just trying to figure this out, trying to understand. Some of us are maybe more awake in that regard than others, but it is really just calling out to those people and helping them look within and understand that they are perfection.
Well, and if the idea that, the idea we came here for is to learn, grow, and be love, right? But then the idea too is to enjoy our time here. So if we're so worried about what God's going to punish us for whenever we're done, are we really enjoying our time while we're here?
Nope. Living in a state of depression over the past, state of anxiety over what's to come in the future. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I myself find myself there a lot of the time. I mean, it's like we're all working through these things that we've experienced and, has been as part of culture, as part of society that we experience. So, absolutely.
Love it. Chapter 2.